How do you land a big project? And the first thing you have to figure out is, how do I get it drawn? How do we get the submittals done? That's the first thing the client's usually asking for, especially on the commercial side.
Welcome to Verify in Field, the Millwork Podcast. Your host, Jacob Edmond, CEO of Ductworks, will be interviewing experts in the industry to bring you insights and knowledge about the latest trends, techniques, and challenges in millwork. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the world of millwork. Here's Jacob.
Welcome back, everybody, to Verify in Field. Today is a special solo episode again. Probably going to be doing more of these to try to cover more pertinent topics and a little bit of just variety for you guys. Today, though, I want to talk about handling large submittals efficiently when your drafting capacity is limited. So this is really common. I get owners of millwork companies that reach out to us at Ductworks, and often it's, hey, I've got this huge job and I can't get it through drafting in time for what the client needs or for production. Or I've got this job that I could land if I could figure out this problem. And so I want to talk about that today, talk about how do you understand the challenge, how do we work through analyzing your current processes, what's the bottleneck, client management aspect of it, coordinating with the GC, some different practical tips and tools for how you can do this. Because that's ultimately how you grow, is how do you land a big project, and the first thing you have to figure out is, how do I get it drawn? How do we get the submittals done? That's the first thing the client's usually asking for, especially on the commercial side. One, why am I able to talk to you guys about this? Why do I even think that I have the experience or information to share with you? So aside from my role, CEO of Ductworks today, we help clients with this every day. Before this, I spent many years, over a decade, managing engineering departments in commercial millwork over 4 or 5 different companies. And I also did a stint during COVID, actually, where I was acting as GM of a facility that we did, I think, between 12 and 20 million just at that facility a year. And this was my job, was how do we solve this problem so that sales can sell our manufacturing capacity and not be worried about drafting or engineering being the bottleneck. And today we help our clients every day solve this problem. So I think it starts first with understanding the challenge. And very commonly, you might be a shop that's used to $100,000 to $500,000 jobs, and you have an engineering team built to handle that. And a lot of times that looks like this job gets landed, gets assigned to one engineer, and that guy can handle the submittals all by himself. And anything bigger than that, though, you're not used to, so you haven't had to adjust, your team hasn't had to adjust their processes to handle a $1 million job or a $5 million job that maybe has many multiple phases, or the whole thing still needs to have submittals done within a month or even sometimes 2 weeks' time. And that's just impossible to have a single engineer, single drafter cover all that scope and shrink the duration down of the submittals into that period of time. So that's usually the first obstacle that you're going to experience. And with that, you're also going to, if you're an owner, you're a sales leader, you're a project executive, and you're trying to overcome this challenge and saying, hey, we want to grow, we have capacity to fill. If I don't, my shop's going to be going home, or I don't know how we're going to fill the year capacity. And I've got a job that's larger than what we've ever done, and I'm experiencing pushback from drafting and engineering team. Because a lot of times this was very common. Sales would come to me, or estimated would come to me as the engineering manager, say, hey, I've got this job, and with the bid, they're asking, hey, can we get submittals in a certain time frame? Can you do that? And early on in my career, I would say, hey, I don't think so. That's going to be a 6-week draft. And they would say, well, that's not possible. I need it in 3 weeks. I'm like, well, I don't know what you expect me to do. That was a problem as an engineering manager that I had to figure out how to solve, because the business needed me to solve that. But it's very common for engineers to push back on that. They're going to be saying, that's unrealistic, that doesn't work with our workflows, I can't put 2 people on this, we draw the whole job in one thing and it screws everything up. If we split it up, you're going to have mistakes, you're going to have 2 people handling information, a lot of very common things. And so that's usually your initial problem, is you're not built to handle that internally. And the team you have is going to tell you that. How can you build yourself for it? So Obviously, short term, we work with a lot of companies like that, and there's plenty of other options out there for getting help with your submittals. And you can do that. But what I would recommend is there are some things you need to do internally to be able to work with an external partner on your submittals and not have your team scrapping their work. For us, our biggest obstacle when we partner with a company is if their engineering team doesn't want to work with us. And it's very important from a change management standpoint and from a partner for a long-term relationship that what we're doing, our goal is to do it in a way that the engineers would do it themselves. So let's not do anything that they're going to say, that's great for submittals, but we're going to redo that for engineering. For example, that's why we work in Microvelm. We work with a lot of clients, and more than half our clients work in Microvelm, and so we want to draw in Microvelm if that's what they do, and do it in a way that they're able to take the products that we've put in, take the spec groups we've set up, and continue using them through engineering, not delete them and replace them or not start from scratch. Or if we're just drawing in AutoCAD and you guys use Cabinet Vision or you use IX or something else, that at the very least we're drawing in your template and your processes the same way your team would use them. And a lot of times the first thing we discover when we start partnering with a company that's not used to working on projects at scale is that even internally they do things differently. Engineer A does things this way, engineer B does things this way. That's one of the first things you really need to overcome in general, whether you outsource or not, to be able to scale to larger jobs. You've got to have a standard process. It's just like in your shop in production. If you have saw operator A and saw operator B takes over the next day and he's totally doing things different, or edge band operator A sets up with this pre-mill and edge band operator B sets up with a different pre-mill, things are going to go bad. You can't have a consistent product, and it's just the same for engineering. You've got to do things, have a consistent process that things can be consistent, and that you have a next man up mentality that's, I have a process and a workflow that works to where if engineer A is sick or out on vacation or unavailable, engineer B can jump in those files and answer a client's question or continue the drawings or whatever it might be. So that's usually the first thing we're going to do is extract from your team, hey, what is your ideal workflow? And what's your template? What's your process? Do you have construction standards? Hey, how do you detail these things? We want to make sure that what we're drawing is not going to be questioned later by production or engineering or purchasing, saying, why did you do it that way? But we need you guys to be able to tell us that. And you guys really need to be able to tell yourself internally that. And that's an obstacle to scaling in general, whether you're growing your team to self-perform these things or not. And so that's usually what we're going to do first, is we're going to work with your team. We're going to understand your current process. We're going to force you to make some decisions if needed of, okay, sometimes it's simple things like, what is your countertop overhang at finished ends? What's your toe kick recess at finished ends? Might be things like that you haven't even discussed internally and are handled differently. Do you show field joints in your countertops in plan view or elevation or at all? Things that affect the outcome and then may not matter to the project manager or client are even going to notice those things, but the engineer is, and he's going to have to answer that question to be able to process things. So those are the things that are important that if you don't have defined, ask your engineering team, hey guys, do we have these written down somewhere? Are we doing them the same way? And then ask your production team, hey, are you getting same results? And a lot of times you're going to find, talking to production, well, I know when I get it from engineer A, it comes this way, and I like it the way engineer B does it, though, better. To overcome this, coming back to the challenge at hand is, how do you handle large job submittals efficiently? The biggest key to that is to shrink duration, you have to scale your capacity. So if you have one person on a job at a time, and that's the only, your process is dependent on that, like we draw the whole project in one CAD file, so only one person can work on it at a time. You're going to be limited to that person's capacity per day. You can only scale the job as much as one person in 8 hours a day can get done. And that's your limit. That's your bottleneck. And so we have to first figure out, hey, how can I put 3, 4, 5 people on this per day? And that allows me to shrink the duration. Because if it's a 1,000-hour draft, it's just math. Okay, if I divide 1,000 hours by 8 hours a day, that's how many days it's going to take. I'm looking for my calculator so I can do the math for you. I should be able to do that in my head. So that's going to be 125 days. We have jobs that we estimate right now that maybe 2,500 hours. And so the way we shrink the duration is by scaling the number of people on the job. And fundamentally, that means your process has to support that. Okay, every room is in its own drawing. This is one of the first obstacles we have with clients and their engineers. I don't like that. Yeah, there's things you may not like that we have to build as your standard process. And if you need it sometimes, then you need to do it all the time. There's other benefits from that. Your files are smaller, easier to manage. It also breaks the job into work order size groupings. When you have the whole job in one drawing, then later the engineer has to say, okay, now how are we going to break this down into work orders? Or a lot of times you have all plans and elevations in one drawing and all typical sections in another. And then again, hey, I'm releasing this room by room. So now I have to grab pages from different parts of the drawings and print them together. So this is another discussion. There's benefits to structuring this way that yield better results down the road for scaling in general. And again, this same concept you guys do in manufacturing every day. We figured this out, but most companies haven't brought this into the office into engineering of assembly line thinking, lean thinking. And so that's the first thing I recommend is how do we structure our file management, our scope management. I've got an estimate that's got things organized by room or by scope item. Let's organize our drawings that same way, the way we're going to release it. However you're going to set up your work orders or your batches or your releases, whatever you call them, let's draw it that way. And it'll make it easier later for your project manager, for your production, everybody. And right now what it solves is I can put 10 people on this job and I can say, this drafter is going to draw all the break rooms. This drafter is going to draw all the like items, basically. Okay, I can put my most skilled people, custom people on the reception desks. It's going to be more time intensive, and I can get other people in the casework or whatever it is. I can logically break up the scope, and you can then track it. So we have a system where we take the estimated scope and we create a progress tracker to where we can track every single room, every single drawing page through the process of initial draft to review, to QC, to completion, to client approval. And you should be able to do that internally as well. You can say, okay, instead of this whole job is 2,500 hours, this room is 5 hours. Okay, now I can plan that. Okay, he should be able to do this in one day, and then I need an hour of review or whatever that might be. So the next obstacle you're going to encounter is managing your client. A lot of times you might have a GC that's just, hey, I just need the whole job submitted. A lot of times that project engineer is just trying to check something off their checklist. Hey, I know I need Millwork submittals, Division 6, done. And what you can do is help them from the start as a project manager, okay, or even from the sales side right up front. Hey, I know you guys need this done, but what's really important? Let me look at your schedule. Do you need wet areas? Do you need the fourth floor? Are you just really trying to get from our submittals blocking coordination? Because a lot of times if you can break down what do you really need instead of the whole job, blocking coordination, great. I'll get you a blocking plan. That's the first thing I'll get my drafting team on so that we're not holding up the whole job for this one little thing that we could actually get done in a few days. And so the more you can break it down with them and say, okay, let's phase the submittals with the phasing of the job. Because what often happens is they'll insist on the whole job, and then that submittal is just going to sit in Procore somewhere. The architect's not going to review the whole thing, or if they do, they're not going to do it well. If you can help manage the GC, manage the client, and communicate to them, hey, help me help you. What is it that you really need? You don't need the whole thing checked off today. Let me get the most important things to you quickly. I can help you faster, and we can start getting things into production and start, like, the end goal is that product on site installed. Let me explain to you how we can get there faster, more efficiently. And that's also going to help your internal team break the job down into manageable chunks. So that's where I would usually start. And you can upfront, if you're a project manager, job's been handed off from sales, I would first start with that. Let me email the GC and say, hey, I see you're requesting this. How can I help you better get the things you need faster? And we're going to be limited if you want the whole thing, and you're not going to want to review the whole thing. So let me help you. And let me break it down into the most important things. Blocking, wet areas, top level down, whatever their schedule is. And then communicate that with your team and put that in a plan. And if you're working with an external partner like us at Ductworks, that's what we're going to ask you up front. What order do you need things in? And we'll deliver them and work in that order. And it's much easier to check things off as you go. And also as you're completing things, you start getting feedback and you say, oh, they actually want to change this detail and that detail is going to occur in later phases. Now I can correct it once before I draw the later phases. So outside of that, it's how do you manage this? How do you, now you've established, okay, we can take on this job. We're going to take our first $5 million job, first $12 million job. Great, we're going to work and manage internally, adjust our processes. We're going to bring on an external partner that's going to help us. So one of the first things we're going to do that you should request any external partners is going to help you give you a cost up front. We'll give you a fixed quote and fixed schedule, and we're going to also disclose the hours that actual we take. So if you want to be able to itemize costs by work order, by phase, however it is, we're able to support that. We use a time clock system. We itemize up front our estimated hours. So one, for your budgeting, you're going to have a fixed cost. It's a cost that if you need, even you can bill up front. That a lot of times billing and cash flow is something new when you're scaling to large jobs like this. And if you're used to having small 1 month, 2 month burn projects, you're probably not billing up front for submittals. Or you might not be used to developing an SOV, a schedule of values that's that detailed. So having a partner like us helping you with your submittals that allows you to be able to pass on a bill and justify to the GC, hey, we're going to progress bill up front. One of our SOV line items is going to be submittals. Hopefully that allows you to get some draws and cash flow going earlier in the project than you might be used to requesting. And if nothing else, you can at least have better job costing across the job of, I know now what our cost breakdown was by work order for drafting specifically, separately from engineering, separately from all of our other project admin costs. You're also going to need good software tools, communication, ways to manage the submittal process. We leverage, obviously, we make available to be able to transfer large files. You're going to need to be able to send the full architecturals, which is big files. Cloud storage and SharePoint, we set up specific folders that are secure, shared with our clients. And then we use Bluebeam Studio. So we internally will create studio sessions, and I would recommend for anybody in our industry that's managing large jobs or any sizes, Bluebeam, when you buy those licenses, you get access to Studio. And with that, there's an amazing feature called Studio Sessions, where you can allow everybody in your team to mark up real time. So a lot of companies we work with still are used to saving a PDF set of shop drawings. One person opens it, puts their markups in, saves it back to the server. Then the next person opens it, marks it up, saves it back to the server. Studio Sessions allows everybody concurrently to do this. I can real time mark up while I can see somebody else marking up. That's going to bring down your durations a lot. If multiple people, the PM, engineer, drafting team, production maybe, the field, you need multiple people to be able to review the drawings before they go to your client. And if you're having to do that one at a time consecutively, that's going to greatly add up and extend your duration to get shop drawings out. So definitely using some sort of concurrent review tool like Bluebeam Studio. And daily communication. For us, it's important that we're communicating daily with our partners on drafting progress. We're asking questions, coming prepared, having a kickoff meeting where we've reviewed everything and we come prepared with questions like, hey, I see they're calling for a laminate that's been discontinued. What are we going to do about that? I see they're calling for something, a hardware with long lead times. You might want to get a takeoff of that to order it and get it in time. I see that they're calling for a material that only comes in 8-foot lengths for countertops. We're going to have seams very often. Lots of things like that. If we can isolate those and bring them to your attention early, that's going to help the rest of the job go smoothly. And then feeding details daily. Don't wait till you have a whole phase done to review it. Same thing, it's going to add up your durations. You need to get used to progress sets. So something we do is we share progress sets with our clients, and we do that internally. Hey, I've got a room done. I know there's going to be 20 of these. Like it. Let's review this before I do 20 the same way that are going to have details we don't like or things we don't want to do. A lot of times our clients aren't used to that. They're busy. Hey, I just want to review at the end. But then you end up waiting and it sits in your inbox until you have 5 hours to sit down and review, and that delays the whole project. If You can review a little bit at a time as it comes. One is going to reduce overall mistakes you have in the end or details that need to be changed. And it's also, I can take 10, 20 minutes to review this instead of wait till I have a 5-hour block to review the whole project. So if you are trying to scale your business and you're trying to take on larger projects, you want to, your shop you feel has capacity, you need the work, or your client, you have a client that says, hey, I'm growing, the GC's growing, and I want to work with you, but I need you to be able to take on this bigger project. And your bottleneck is drafting. Your bottleneck is submittals. My team can't handle a project this big in this duration. I think it's important to have a partner that can work in your processes and your systems for those use cases, those scenarios, because it's not realistic to onboard 6 drafters only for this project and then offboard them. Like, nobody can really do that. Find them, onboard them, train them, and then tell them, hey, I'm going to lay you off because I don't have that need anymore. That's just not realistic. And so it's also important that you communicate clearly to your internal team why you're doing this. And it's not to take their jobs away, or it's not to make their jobs harder. It's, we need your involvement. You need their involvement as an owner of your team. They need to be a part of this process, and they need to be on board with it. And sometimes if you have people that are they just don't want to change, they're set in their ways, you've got to make the hard decision of, hey, this is what we're doing as a company. And you as an engineer, if you're opposing helping the business support, how do we accomplish this? They need to understand that they're opposing, that's going to have trickle-down effect of everybody else. Okay, how are they going to feel when the shop has to go home because they're waiting on work to get through engineering? And that's what production needs. So it is a whole team effort. It's not easy, but the people who can figure this out are the people who are going to grow and be successful. So if this is something you're struggling with, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love for you to reach out to us and see how we can help. Reach out to some of the people that have worked with us. This is what we do every day. And there's lots of other good partners out there that help solve this problem. I would highly recommend starting before you need it. Work with a partner that you can develop a long-term relationship so that when these big jobs come along, it's as smooth as possible. And your team's used to working with the external partner, used to the dynamic of large job, organization, file management, workflow, communication, and then that large job is going to go that much smoother. I hope you enjoy these solo episodes. If you've got feedback or questions, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok now, or our website. So leave a comment, leave a message. I would love to get your feedback on what you'd love to see on this podcast, and we can add to future episodes. Follow and like us so that you get notified when new episodes come out or new content. Go check out our website also. I have some blog posts there. Go hit the blog button and you'll see articles I've written about managing your engineering department, which is very much aimed at this. Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, I hope you tune in next week for another great episode.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksnw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verified in Field.